This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 317 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. We've got some border crossing tales today. Firstly, let me pay my respects to the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, where I'm recording this podcast on a very hot summer day. Now, back to border crossings. Back in episode 78, which is the last time we talked border crossings, it's quite some years back, I think I probably explained that borders fascinate me because I've grown up in a country where there are no international borders to cross. There's just the ocean. But in my 20s, when I lived in Bratislava in Slovakia, and I could see from my balcony window across the borders into both Hungary and Austria, that astounded me. So border crossings fascinate me too, and there's often some really good stories to hear, and that's definitely the case today. My first guest actually has a story about another triple border, like my view from Bratislava there. Actually, I learnt today I could call it a tri-point. Apparently, there are 175 tri-points in the world where three countries join at once. Anyway, this particular story is especially interesting to me because it's a triple border that I actually visited myself last year. But I will let my guest, Michael Jensen, tell you more.
So after Bangkok, Brent and I decided to go to Chiang Rai, Thailand, which is way up in the northern part of Thailand. And while we were there at the homestay, they offered this great day trip around the Golden Triangle, and all these other famous sites up in northern Thailand, the White Temple, places that you've actually been to and talked about yourself. And one of them was you had the opportunity to cross into Myanmar at the Mae Sai border crossing. And we were very intrigued by this idea of you just walk over to the border, spend an hour over on the other side of the border, and then come back. Obviously, going on what's in Myanmar, we do not want to be supporting the authoritarian government, which is waging the campaign against the people down south. But we felt like crossing the border and walking around, looking around was not exactly in violation of that. So we were looking into it, and this is not a border crossing that is used all that frequently by Westerners. It's a somewhat small border crossing, way up north between Myanmar and Thailand. And there have been border closing. The border has suddenly closed along some of the other border crossings without warning. They've just sort of slammed it shut. That had not happened to the Mae Sai border in quite some time, but it was a possibility. So we were a little nervous about it. So we were asking lots of questions and messaging Facebook groups and talking to people. And we were just getting a lot of mixed feelings about it, a lot of mixed signals. So our driver, who was a Thai guy, just totally encouraged us to go across. He's like, oh, you don't need to worry about it. Nothing's going to happen. So he drove us up to the gate, and I got out of the car and walked over. You could walk up to the river and look across the other side. And so we went down to the riverbank, and we're like 5 meters now from Myanmar. It's like it's right there, and it's really intriguing, it's really tempting. So we walk back up to the border crossing itself, and there's a long line of cars and people waiting to go across, and a lot of flood of people coming the other way. And they're all Thai and all Myanmarian, Burmese. I don't see any other Westerners up there, so it's just us. So this is not a place frequented by a lot of holiday people. So I walk inside the office, and you have to sort of walk down this dark corridor. It's a very old building. You're not talking about a shiny new border crossing that looks really official. And there's a woman sitting at one of the two windows where you can cross over. And there's a whole bunch of signs in different languages, and I don't think there was anything English. And I walk up and I ask her, are we able to cross over and come back? And she's like looking at me and like sort of nodding, and I know ahead of time that you pay a little fee, they'll stamp your passport, you go in, and you come back, and I'm trying to communicate with her, and she's just sort of like holding up her hands, like I don't know what you want to do, but if you want to come through, and there's some people behind me, so I turn back around and I go back outside to Brent and I say, We have a phrase we like to say called "going beyond Rangoon," which is based on an old movie about Myanmar, and we always like to do things that take us beyond Rangoon. Have that sort of adventure.
I love that.
But we're also cautious people. We like to challenge ourselves, but we don't like to do things that are foolhardy. And so I'm standing there looking around this office and knowing this woman doesn't really speak any English, and knowing that once I go across the border, I'm in Myanmar, where things are complicated and chaotic, and we could go across, and we don't have, all we have is our passports. We don't have our luggage. We've got our Thai guide who, he knows the hotel we were staying at, but not much more about it. So if we go across and don't come back, we don't really have anybody to help us out, until the border would open back up, or if we ran into some hassle with some other border crossing guard who said, sorry, you have the wrong documents. And, and we've had border crossing problems before. You have to take this stuff seriously. Mm-hmm. So it's not the most exciting end of the story, but ultimately I went back out to Brent and I said, I don't think we should go beyond Rangoon here. I think we've come up really close to beyond Rangoon. Let's walk around Mai Sai, which is a very interesting border town, very unlike anything else we'd ever seen before, because there's a lot of Myanmarians coming across to shop in Thailand, and I guess there's Thai people going up to the other side. So that felt very interesting and something a bit out of our experience. So we wandered around Mai Sai for an hour and then got back with our driver and continued on the rest of the tour. So do I regret not having gone beyond Rangoon in that situation? Not really. I think it was probably the smarter thing to do in that case. And maybe in my 20s I would have done it, but in my 50s at that point, it was like, yeah, I don't need that much excitement in my life.
I think this is how we yes, this is a very good story of what we would do in our 20s versus later, I think, because I would have totally crossed it in my 20s, and now absolutely I would have been very cautious, or probably done the same as you, because it's all too easy, and we've all heard too many stories of people who've got stuck on the wrong side, and all sorts of things can go wrong. And do you need to be there? Probably, you could see it. That's just going to be close enough that time.
Well, I think part of our caution came from, we had been in Thailand and we'd gone to Cambodia, and then we'd come back to Thailand, and we actually ran into trouble at the Bangkok airport coming back into Bangkok from Cambodia. Uh-huh. The guy stopped us and said, you were just here, you were here for 2 months, and now you've gone to Cambodia, and now you're coming back. How long are you planning on staying for? And he actually asked us for an onward ticket, which we have never been asked for in 7 years of travel.
Wow. Me neither.
No one's ever asked us for an onward ticket. No, never been stopped. White American passport privilege, they just wave us on through. And this guy's like, he's flipping through our passports, and we have brand new passports that we got in Bangkok. So maybe that had him suspicious too. But it's like, I had to pull up and show him that we had flights out of Thailand a month later, or 6 weeks later. Otherwise, I don't know that he would have let us in. So I think that was also in the back of my mind going to Myanmar. It's like, things happen, you get a guard who doesn't like you for some reason, and all of a sudden you have a problem. And it just, the risk of it seemed too high.
So, in fact, this was a border crossing story about actually not crossing a border, and I still think that was a very good decision. My other stories today are about border crossings that, it sounded like they weren't going to be made. But, you'll just have to listen and find out. I'm not telling you whether they work out or not. But up next, I am speaking with Antonio Cala, and he describes a particularly tricky border crossing story which happened to he and his wife on their long motorcycle trip through Africa in 2022.
So when we were in Cameroon, we wanted to go to these very remote... my wife and I were really into wildlife and places off the beaten path. And so there's this very famous national park in the CAR, in the Central African Republic, and the border with Cameroon, called Sanga-Shanga. Why don't we just drive across the border? The national park is literally on the border. Like, the river is dividing the two countries. Right. The other side of the river is the national park. And if we can make it, we'll have a story. Anyway, we leave the capital of Cameroon, Yaoundé, and we go to this southeast part of Cameroon, which is very remote. It took us 3 days to get to the border town called Libombo in the Cameroonian side. And the plan is we're going to go to the Sanga-Shanga National Park, and the town next to it is called Bayanga in the CAR. Mm-hmm. And together we say, look, it's a pain to get all the way there with the motorbikes, particularly to drive your motorbikes in the CAR. CAR is one of the most corrupt countries in Africa. So we decide to, as the place we're going to stay, to bring a boat from there so they can pick us up, put the bikes in the boat, and then take us all the way directly to the lodge. By judging how much we pay for the boat, I was expecting an actual boat, right? But you're in Central Africa. So this guy turns up with a tiny boat and a 40 or 35 horsepower engine. And this is a massive river. How are we going to put, first thing, like, we have to put the bikes into this boat, and then the two of us and our bags and this guy. And
This doesn't sound good.
Is this thing going to work? The bikes are heavy. There's no docks or anything. We're talking about a muddy riverbed. And, you know, like when you walk in it, you sink in it. How are you going to put the bikes on there? Well, in Africa, everything is sort of with muscle power. You just need enough people. Like 10 dudes come, like ripped. They take the bikes, put them in there. No problem. Okay, cool. Problem solved. Bikes are there. We'll see how we get them out on the other side. But bikes are there. We're ready to go. And it starts to rain like we've never seen before. Like bucketing down.
Oh no.
Bucketing down. This is Central Africa, rains every day. I've never seen raining so hard like this.
Oh no.
We have to wait. There's no way we can go. Like it's you can't even see past 10 meters, you know, and the river is full of like dried riverbeds, sandbars, hippos, crocs, you name it. They have it. So even the driver said, no, we can go. We have to wait. Okay, we wait.
Okay, I'm glad the driver's sensible too.
I thought, I trust this guy. He seems pretty knowledgeable. Cool. Okay, let's go. It's raining again, but he said we have to do the immigration on the other side, and it's gonna be a while. So because there's three places that we have to stop at the river, and you gotta get out and do immigration, then military checks, then police checks.
Right.
I've never seen immigration points like in the CAR, in the Libongo River. Like it's like people live there, and then on top of that is actually the nicest house around, and that's where the immigration officer is. So we go in this, and they're all super corrupt. They don't want to stamp your passport. No, you gotta pay me this much, you gotta pay me that much. And we've been dealing with this through Africa, but here was another level. And it's getting dark, it's getting late, and we still have another hour to drive up the river to get to where we want to go. So we end up kind of, negotiating as much as we can. We pay them. We took like 3 hours or something doing all this, and now it gets dark. I said, the guy seems pretty confident. We don't have any chance, you know.
What else are you going to do?
We just nowhere to drive. It's still raining like crazy. Okay, let's go. It gets dark, no lights. The guy doesn't have lights. The boat doesn't have lights. But the guy, you know, seems to know where we're going. And then at some point, like 10 minutes in, the engine stops.
Oh no.
And the engine stops. And we're trying to start it. The engine doesn't stop. Oh. Pitch dark. You can't see anything. You can hear a lot. Like you can hear all the animals, all the, you know. And the river, it's strong, you know. Like as soon as the engine stops, we're going down the river. So far from where we want to go.
Oh no. Backwards.
And we don't see anything. We get our head torch. We have a head torch with us. The guy doesn't have any lights. Doesn't have any cell phone. We can't even work on the engine. We have to avoid hitting rocks and sandbar, or you're just drifting down the river.
Yeah.
And so we started there, you know, like avoid a few close calls. And after a bit, suddenly, out of nowhere, and this is a very African thing, that if you haven't been to this part of the world, it's hard to imagine, but in Africa, there's people everywhere. You think you're alone, but there's people everywhere. This guy turns up in the middle of the night with a pirogue, which is like a dugout canoe. So this guy turns up completely naked, like nothing, you know, like pure naked with his kid. They help us to bring the boat to a sandbar in the middle of the river. Uh-huh. So at least we're not drifting, and we can work on the engine. Our driver pulls us some tools. He had tools, good. Mm-hmm. So with our little torch, he started working the engine, and I don't know, I tried one thing, another thing. We have a bit of experience from our boating days. We had a very similar engine, but we can figure out what happens. Mm-hmm. And this engine is probably, 20, 30, 40 years old. I don't know. It's
not new
standards.
Yeah.
We definitely had a much newer version on the boat.
Right.
So
Oh my goodness.
after half an hour, he sort of managed to start it, but then stops. Finally, the engine stops. But when he goes fast, the engine chokes again and stops. Oh, no. So back to the sandbar. Okay, we started again, and then we gotta go like super slow up the river, and pitch dark. We don't see anything. We use this, head torch, and finally we go. We thank our naked friend for their help, and finally, what it was going to be 1 hour up the river, it took I don't know, two and a half. We get to this lodge, and finally, all we have to do is put the bags back in the in the shore and all that. But
that's so
that
easy.
Was easy compared to, but we were safe. We made it to the Central African Republic, and what an entry!
Wow. So hooray, they got in. And Antonio did go on to tell me that the national park they visited in the Central African Republic is now his favourite of all time. So it was well worth the hassle. This is one of those stories that, as Antonio told it, and even when I was editing it again, I got so lost in it. I usually make lots of notes, but I just couldn't stop listening. I was totally absorbed. So the bonus is that Antonio then told me that he had another border experience to share. So I said, yes, please do. So just to set the context, on the same trip, they were crossing from Algeria to Mauritania at Tindouf, or just near this town of Tindouf, which is the border crossing, which is also near Western Sahara. So in Tindouf, there are camps for refugees from Western Sahara, so it's a politically tricky place. Super, super remote, and any travellers crossing that border would be like hardcore off-roaders. Once you cross the border into Mauritania, you have to go 800 kilometres without roads or any services. You have to be totally self-sufficient. Apparently this crossing opened to tourists for the first time ever in 2019, then of course closed through COVID. And when Antonio and his wife were approaching that area in 2022, they had heard stories that it wasn't closed. That's as good as it got. And so they decided to take the chance.
But long story short, after a couple of weeks, we get down to Tindouf, and that's the border town. That's the town before the border, right? And this is a very protected area because of the conflict going on, and they don't want tourists mucking around. But our fixer in Algeria ensured, look, we got everything, we got all the papers. You're going to be allowed to get out of Algeria, no problem. The Mauritanian side, no problem. Mauritania is very open. It's open for COVID. People can get in. You can get visa on arrival. You just have to pay euros. Make sure you have them in cash. No problem. We load up the bikes, for this long crossing, 800 kilometers, no roads, on a small motorbikes. We have to carry a lot of petrol, a lot of water. So we're all ready because it's very remote, no connection, no internet, nothing. We go to the border, and as always in Algeria, people are really nice, just they take their time, but paperwork is all in order, good. We enter in Algeria in a one-entry visa, and this is an important point here. One entry.
Which you have done.
And we noticed that there's a lot of paperwork in the country. Luckily, we had a very good fixer that took care of everything. Thanks was him. Great guy. We do all the paperwork, say bye to our guides, crying, like Algeria's been great. We leave the Algerian border, and there's about a kilometer maybe to the Mauritanian post. This is in the middle of nowhere. And when I mean nowhere, nothing. Like no mountains, you look at the horizon and there's nothing.
Wow.
360 flat, not a single tree. Like never seen a place like that. You get to the Mauritanian post and they ask us, do you have authorization to enter Mauritania? And we were like, what do you mean? We don't need, it's visa on arrival, Mauritania is open, we're Spanish and Americans, we can buy the visa on arrival. No, you need a authorization to enter Mauritania. We can let you in because for this border crossing, you need authorization. Oh, no. Well, but we can go back, man. We checked out for Algeria. Yeah. We have a passport stamped out. Can we call with somebody? No, you can do it. You have to go back. What do you mean? We can't go back, man. We checked out of Algeria. And how are we going to get another visa? It took us a month to get a visa before. And we can't even call anybody. Our cell phone doesn't work here. No, but here you can get in, man. Sorry. Close the door.
Wow.
Okay, thank you. What do we do now? We're in the middle of nowhere. go back to the Algerian post again, I guess, and trying to talk to them and see if they can let us in. So we go back and they say, yeah, no worries, we'll take you back. Don't tell anybody. Whew. Super nice people. Say, look, a week ago there was a Spaniard here and he was in a car. The same thing happened to him. And what he did, he called the embassy in Mauritania and he got his paperwork done. And then he came back 5 days later with a letter and they let him in. Can we go back to Tindouf? Because there's no internet here at the border. Yeah. There's nothing we can do. And I can contact anybody. I say, yeah, but I said, what's the problem with the visa? I said, no worry, we're going to do one thing. You go to Tindouf and when you come back, when you sort out your paperwork, you come back through here. And we sort it out. Just in Tindouf, you can't leave Tindouf. You have to stay in Tindouf. So we went back to Tindouf, and now we have the problem. Like, well, I have a Spanish passport. My wife has an American passport. We married, but I have a green card in America, and she has a residence in Spain. But at that time, because we've been traveling a lot, we haven't had time to get the other country's passport, right?
Yeah, fair enough.
So this is complicated because now we have two passports, two embassies to deal with.
Yeah.
And I called the Spanish embassy, and she calls the American embassy. The American embassy say, no, you don't need an authorization. You can cross the border. I say, yeah.
Well, we tried. It didn't work.
We tried, it didn't work. And in Africa, things work like that. There's some rules published on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or whatever they want to put it.
Yeah.
And then there's different rules, which is the one that the guy at the border decide at that particular time.
Yeah. and what he says counts a lot.
Yeah, exactly. That's the rule. That's the law, man. But anyway, the Americans, they say, look, we can't do anything about it. But the Spanish, we knew that they help another Spaniard.
So they must know about this issue, yeah.
They say, look, send me through WhatsApp. This is my WhatsApp. Tell me, explain me what happens. And I explain the situation, and I say, yeah, we can do it. But I say, look, my wife is here with me. We married. We live in Spain. and they say, well, we're going to try. But at the end, it's up to the Mauritanian authorities. We're going to put her in there, see what happens.
Right. That was nice.
But this is going to take a week, man. This is like, it's not on our end. Like, it's no, we can do anything about it. This is Mauritanian stuff. So we're a week stuck in Tindouf. We have people like, if we want to go out and buy food, we need to wait for the police to come with us. They don't let us walk around Tindouf. They don't let us do anything. We locked up. Anyway, long story short, the Spanish embassy, after about 5 or 6 days, WhatsApp me, look, this authorization card, just put in your phone, print it out. We put your wife in there. We think it might work, it might not work. Just go to the embassy and pretend that it's for both. And there we go. We go to the border. Algerians, what they did, they just changed the exit date in your passport. Okay. Yeah, you didn't leave on the 10th, you leave on the 17th, no problem. Nobody knows about it. Don't tell anybody. Then we went to the Mauritanian, and fair enough. No, where do you get these letters? Where do you get that? Blah, blah, blah. But the Spanish authorities, they call them. Somehow. So naturally they could make calls, because before they say, can we call the Spanish embassy from your telephone? Say, no, we can't do that. We don't have phones. And then suddenly they call everybody. They got suddenly, hey, yeah, we got 4G internet. We didn't have that. But anyway, they accepted. They take us in.
And your wife as well.
They take my wife as well. Finally, we didn't mention it. We say, yeah, this is for me and my wife. Don't mention you omit she's American and blah blah. There's my wife, me. So we go through, and then we were in Mauritania and ready for another adventure, which is crossing the Sahara.
Another success. I was very glad to hear that in the end they did manage to make it into Mauritania. I feel like that border, or that particular border point, is a spot I may never see in life. I can't imagine crossing into 800 kilometres of Saharan desert without even a road to follow. Anyway, thank you very much for listening to episode 317 of the Thoughtful Travel podcast. A shout out, big thank you to my guests, who today were Michael Jensen from Brent and Michael Are Going Places. You can find more of their fabulous adventures at brentandmichaelaregoingplaces.com. And also a big thanks to Antonio Cala of AdventureFix, adventurefix.co. I also mentioned in the intro episode 78 on border crossings. I'd encourage you to go back and have a listen. at notaballerina.com/78, or just search for episode 78 on your podcast app. It includes one of my all-time favourite tales, and also I know it's been very popular with earlier listeners of the show. It's Matt Eakin's story of getting into Bangladesh without a visa. And the absolutely delightful Matt passed away the year before last on a Himalayan adventure. It was such sad news, but I'm so glad some of his fabulous stories live on, so I'd encourage you to have a listen. Don't forget to come and join our Facebook group for Thoughtful Travellers or the LinkedIn group for Thoughtful Travellers. Links are in the show notes. And for this episode, the show notes are at notaballerina.com/317. As always, thank you so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.